the NBA announced their most recent Hall of Fame class. The 3 stars that will be inducted are some of the biggest names the sports has ever seen. I discuss all 3 of the players and their legacies, as well as the big Don's, Donald Trump's big meeting with all these sports commissioners and what his thoughts are when it comes to getting sports back to the American people. The MLB announced a new plan on how they are going to get games played. I think some of the details of it are a little shocking. Some of you guys really want baseball. And for the sake of the players, I don't want baseball that bad. I tell you why. Lastly, a special ranking. And why are they showing NBA players playing 2K on national television? As always, follow the show on Twitter at Chris Rennie Show and follow me on Twitter at Chris Rennie CFB for all updates of my life. Thank you for coming and enjoy the show. I can't do this anymore. What's this guy saying? Who gave these national radio hosts these jobs? Jeez. Can't even understand that guy. What's he even talking about? I can't take it anymore. Those national media personalities making you feel like that, make a change. Listen to this idiot about the sports that matter from the opinion that matters. Haha, you said it, not me. Now for today's takes from the most opinionated host in sports talk. Recently, I became even more millennial, and I'm a little late to this party. But I thought, let's hedge my bets. Let's get into another form of content creation. And as a young person getting into sports talk, there are a lot of obstacles to get where you want to go. I want to get onto the radio. But I also wouldn't mind becoming a sports writer. So hedging my bets was the best option to do that. So, in today's world, there is such a common theme with wanting to go viral. Everyone wants to go viral all the time. Some people get lucky with it. Some people are really good at being funny on Twitter. I am not the funniest guy on Twitter, and I think sometimes my humor has a little bit too much layer to it. Some flair that some people just don't understand. You can't really sense the tone on Twitter. But let's not discuss my Twitter. Let's discuss content creation. So the more I get into this now, I know the key. It's just to have fun doing what you're doing, I am challenging myself to write a blog post every day of April, and I am going to try to put out 2 episodes of the Chris Rennie Show per week and 2 Buck Off episodes per week, which is going to be a challenge with content creation without sports happening, but being able to provide entertainment every day for, 22 more days. What day is it today? 23 more days is going to be extremely fun. Most recently, I did a college football article called The Tiger Kings of College Football. Check it out on my website, withoutwinners.com. And then I did another one called Champions for a Little. The Tiger Kings of College Football compares a Tiger King character to their college football counterpart. It's a very fun read, I believe, and I think the comparisons are actually pretty good. And Champions for a Little is about some of the shortest lived champions in sports. I took a look at 3 people's championship runs that lasted a very short amount of time. So to begin this show, I didn't want to really just talk about sports or something I've been doing. I wanted to challenge you to establish a goal for yourself, whether that be working out every day, writing every day, a home improvement chore every day, or any type of thing that will make you better than you already are every day. Because this quarantine is tough. Social distancing, it's been tough on all of us. And to keep positivity, there has to be goals, to be completely honest. Goals that are set forth. So, continuing down this conversation topic, some of the most illustrious goals in the world are the goal of becoming a professional sports Hall of Fame member. And that takes me to the first topic of today's show. Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, and Tim Duncan all will be inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. So arguably this is the best class of Hall of Famers I've seen in my life. And it might be the best Hall of Fame class of all time. Respectively, in all sports, this could be one of the top 10 Hall of Fame classes ever. Point blank, period. I mean, all three of these guys are champions. All three of these guys have MVPs, and I'm going to read through their accolades individually. But, this class is one of the greatest of all time. And, the NBA Hall of Fame is usually seen as a joke compared to the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, which has become a joke for all the wrong reasons. The NBA is the most welcoming Hall of Fame, and that's a good thing and it's a bad thing. Everyone gets into the NBA Hall of Fame. That's a joke that runs around Twitter. Chris Webber is in the conversation to become a Hall of Famer, and when you look at Chris Webber's career stats, he wasn't a bad player. But in any other league, the Hall of Fame is not reserved for wasn't a bad player. Averaging 20 points per game in your career is solid. Shooting 47% from the field is solid. But what in his own reality did he fully accomplish in his time? He led the Sacramento Kings for a little bit, and that's the comparison I'm making. So if Chris Webber is going to make this Hall of Fame, does it tarnish the Hall of Fame? No, he's a solid player, but there are players who do not achieve as much as guys like Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan. In the NFL, you need to be a record setter. You need to be a guy who completely changed the era of the sport. That is part of the criteria, or change the franchise in which you played for. The NBA, you could just be popular and you can make it to the Basketball Hall of Fame. Now, college coaches, they have to accomplish a lot to make it. But NBA players, not as much. No, I think the NBA Hall of Fame was playing catch up with the rest of them, had to get its classes in, had to get its players in. And yes, the upper echelon of the NBA Hall of Fame is as good as the rest of the leagues. But when you look at the worst Hall of Famers in sports, it's not really great. When you look at some of the worst Hall of Famers, you've got guys who didn't really win anything in the Hall of Fame. You've got guys like, I looked up this list. Calvin Murphy comes up. He was good in college, All-American. He went to the Rockets. He was an undersized guard. Played 13 seasons. Solid player. 17 points per game. But what did he really accomplish? He made the all-rookie first team and then an all-star team in 1979. That is 2 accomplishments. That's someone who's in the NBA Hall of Fame. And the NBA Hall of Fame, with all the greats it has, also has some slouches. And that's where the difference is. I think the most... you could look through the history, and yes, there's a lot of people who impacted basketball from a cultural standpoint. Arvydas Sabonis was the greatest player in European basketball history and came to the NBA late in his career. You have to respect his accomplishments because he was not allowed to leave the USSR. And if he was, he would have by far and away been the best big man of his era. The other man who had such a cultural impact on the sport was Yao Ming. Now, Yao Ming, when he was healthy, when he was in his prime, when he was playing consistently, he was the monster China tried to create. He was an unbelievable athletic phenomenon, and he was a government-made basketball phenomenon. The two parents he had were track stars in China, tall track stars, and they were in a point in time similar to what they did with Ivan Drago in Rocky IV, and they made Yao Ming. And if you don't believe me, go pull up Yao Ming. Let's think of the right way to created in lab. It's not. He was not created in a lab, but that's what this is. What is reported. So that's the easiest way to Google it. Yao Ming in a lab. The basketball giant made in China by order of the state. So yes, that actually happened. That was real. He was ordered to be made, and he wasn't even good at basketball until he was 14. And besides being really tall and having a slight handle for a big man, Yao Ming was a very average star. And that, to me, takes away from what it means for a guy like Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, and Tim Duncan to be in the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame does not have the same luster as the other sports Hall of Fames. When a player makes the NFL Hall of Fame, it is 100% on merit, and they are going to decline more people than they are going to accept. In the NBA, that is not how it works. If you made an all-star team, if you scored like 15 points per game and were good and were part of a constant winner, you're probably going to make the Hall of Fame. And there's different levels of Hall of Famers. Now, yes, on the Spurs, there's Tim Duncan, the best of the Spurs, better than David Robinson, better than Tony Parker, better than Manu Ginobili. That doesn't mean David Robinson and Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili are bad Hall of Famers. They are not. They are very, very talented basketball players who deserve it. Kobe Bryant, top 10 basketball player of all time. Kevin Garnett, top 20 basketball player of all time. Tim Duncan, same area. These guys were iconic. These guys defined their era in their own way. And these guys accomplished everything you could in the sport. And that is why the NBA Hall of Fame has failed them. But what these guys didn't do was fail the NBA. And in a lot of ways, we're going to start with Kobe Bryant. So Kobe Bryant, we all know the accolades. 5-time NBA champion, 7 NBA Finals appearances, 15-time All-NBA, tied for first in that. 81-point game, averaged 40 points per game for an entire month, 2-time Finals MVP, 4th all-time in points, and so much more. He also, I'm pretty sure, has the most 50-point games, and I'm pretty sure he has the most 60-point games. I've seen that stat floating around. Do I believe it? I do. But don't quote me on that stat. It's just what I saw on the internet when I was doing my research. I just thought about Wilt Chamberlain. I was like, that guy could probably have more of those. But we won't go down that rabbit hole. He's either 1 or he's 2. All-timer. When you talk about the LeBron Jordan discussion, Kobe Bryant is not the basketball player that LeBron James is. But he is one of the greatest competitors all of sports has ever seen. And in his final legacy, he scored 61 points, becoming the oldest player to score 60 points in a game by about 5 years and like 200-something days. And that is how he closed out. He was always ready for that storybook moment. And whether it was that conference finals matchup against the Trailblazers or his shot, I can't even remember the game, but he pulled his shirt, you saw the logo, and he did his rat teeth. Whenever he broke out the underbite, it was over, for real. I mean, the finals, he beat the Magic, he beat the Celtics in a finals rematch. He won 3 with Shaquille O'Neal, and his legacy it's there. It's unreal. 7 NBA Finals appearances, that is unreal. Yes, no, he was not the illustrious 6 for 6, but this guy was one of the greatest winners in the sports. The unfortunate part about Kobe is his peaks came with his valleys at the same time. When Kobe was playing his best basketball, the Lakers were playing their worst basketball. When Kobe was playing his best basketball, he was running into trouble in Denver, Colorado, hotel rooms. Those are also parts of Kobe Bryant's legacy that cannot go unforgotten. Kobe Bryant was not a perfect basketball player. Kobe Bryant fought teammates. Kobe Bryant did all this. But at the end of the day, Kobe Bryant was a winner. And Kobe Bryant, with his 5 NBA championships, is in the Hall of Fame. And did he ever catch the ghost of Michael Jordan? No. But was he the most similar player to Michael Jordan in the history of basketball? Absolutely. Kobe Bryant, from the time he entered the league, said he wanted to be like Michael Jordan and did not run away from that goal. When you're chasing a ghost that a whole generation defends in every way imaginable, you really, really can never catch it. That is what Kobe Bryant did. And although Kobe Bryant never caught the ghost of Michael Jordan, and if he won that 6th title, maybe the conversation's a little different. But Kobe Bryant's impact on the league was this brand that was associated with him, this brand of invincibility. And that's why when Kobe Bryant perished in the helicopter crash, so many people did not believe it. It is because Kobe can't die. Kobe is above life. That was how his fans perceived him. He was a god among men, and that is why when he perished with his daughter Gianna Bryant and the other victims in that crash, it was so heartbreaking and so hard to believe that Kobe, of all people, would perish in a way so accidental. And that's why that hurt. And this is going to be the final honor of his long and illustrious basketball career. His numbers are retired. He will probably have an award named after him. I believe he did. The All-Star Game MVP award, which he has the most of, is named after him now already. And I wouldn't be surprised if the MVP award became the name it is. And Kobe Bryant, I mean, he had an impact on the sport like few have. You know, you've got go back to the beginning, you've got Wilt, you've got Dr. J, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Shaq, Kobe Bryant. You know, as good as the other two guys were, they didn't drive the league. Kobe Bryant drove the league. And between Michael Jordan being the best player in the world, he had his window where he got the opportunity for a little bit. But no one ever really gave him the credit he deserved in that window. Because, well, he was in that window. Well, he was trying to be the best player in the world. His team was not allowing him to do that. And the Lakers had a very rough stretch. So, yes, Kobe Bryant was going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. They eliminated the voting process to honor him, and he will be honored. And his wife, Vanessa, is probably going to give a great speech. And there's going to be a lot of talks about who's going to be his presenter. And I don't think it should be one presenter. I think when you talk about the legacy of a person who's impacted so many people, it's got to be a group of presenters. You know, this is a legacy. This is a person who left his mark on a league like nobody else has. And that is why this NBA Hall of Fame ceremony is going to be so somber. But it's going to be a happy experience because this is the final way to pay the respects to him. And this has been a tough year. You've got this, you've got the virus, the NBA season may not come to an end, and that is unfortunate. But it's been a career, and this was needed. This was needed for that little bit of closure you can possibly have on such a tragic event that happened and took place. Now, moving forward, we're going to talk about the other guy, one of the few men who were able to beat Kobe Bryant in a finals game, in a finals series. That is Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett, to me, is one of the more underrated stars in the sport's history. I think when you look at his stats, when you look at his ranks, there's really not much you can do. And it's just one of those things where you really can't put into words what this guy meant to the sport. You know, Minnesota was a basketball, it was like the Siberia of the NBA for the longest time. It still is. Like, you cannot win in Minnesota. That is a given fact. Kevin Love left Minnesota. Kevin Garnett left Minnesota. Karl Anthony Towns is probably going to leave Minnesota. Andrew Wiggins got himself out of Minnesota. There's no greatness in Minnesota. You know, Minnesota is the type of place that drafts Johnny Flynn, a guy who can't play defense, over Steph Curry. It's a organization that has an owner that is not the most supportive owner. Glenn Taylor, he is, as Kevin Garnett would refer to, as a snake mother effer. So yes, there's some ill will there for obvious reasons. And Kevin Garnett forced himself out of Minnesota. And he doesn't want his jersey retired in Minnesota. And that is why, as a Hall of Famer, he's going in as a Boston Celtic. He gave a great run. And now in the West, it was run by Kobe Bryant. He was not going to get out of the West. And in the East, there was not a team he could go to on his own to win a championship. So Kobe Bryant drove Kevin Garnett out of the West to the East, which was at the time much easier. You had LeBron James in your way, and that was it. And LeBron was playing on a team that was not built for that level of success. But the Celtics definitely couldn't get past them. The only team that got past the LeBron team was the Magic, and no one thought that those LeBron teams were going to be beatable moving forward. That wasn't the case. Kevin Garnett and the Celtics left their lasting legacy on LeBron James and knocked him out. And that was when my lasting images of LeBron James were. So Kevin Garnett, yes, he did not make LeBron leave. LeBron left because he had to. And then LeBron formed the super team and ended the Celtics' big three. And then that is the impact the Celtics had. Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen formed the first big three, the first super team that was truly successful. They got the job done. They won their championship. They thought they were going to get two, but then Kobe Bryant ended up taking care of business. And then that was how that went. But when you look at the career stats of Kevin Garnett, he has one NBA championship, one MVP. He's 18th all-time in points, 9th in rebounds, 15-time All-Star, 9-time All-NBA, 12-time All-NBA defensive team. That's number one for that, or number two for that, behind the other guy in this list. 18th in blocks. So this guy was a defensive stud, an ultra competitor, an all-time in points, an all-timer in rebounds. Like, this guy is legitimately a top 20 player of all time, and no one ever talks about Kevin Garnett in that regard. It's because he spent most of his career in Minnesota. When you look at Minnesota, the Timberwolves history, they are the worst win percentage team in the NBA, and they are the second worst in all of American sports behind the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that is how bad the Minnesota Timberwolves are as a franchise. And KG got that to the playoffs. Like, he was on the team the last time the Minnesota Timberwolves were in the playoffs. That is absurd. And that's the impact he had on teams. Paul Pierce said it himself on Scott Van Pelt's Sports Center. When KG showed up, there was no more fun in practice. It was all business all the time. We were there to win a championship. That is what he changed. That's the attitude he brought to the sport. Kevin Garnett's not going to go down as a player like LeBron James, like Kobe Bryant, like Michael Jordan, like Magic Johnson, like Larry Bird. No, but he is in that second or third tier, and his personality and his attitude is going to drive a long, successful career in the media, and he's a big enough star to where he's not going to have to just be a suit on the stage behind the podium unless he wants to. And that is the legacy Kevin Garnett's going to lead. My friend yesterday sent me a minute and a half long Twitter post with Kevin Garnett just throwing down hammers on people, and you could probably make a 10-minute long video like that. You could probably make a 10-minute long video of Kevin Garnett just swatting the hell out of people. That was how good Kevin Garnett was. And if you guys remember those Celtics team, he wasn't the best scorer, but he was for sure the best player on those teams, no questions about it. Paul Pierce took that main ball handling scorer role. Ray Allen was the third guy in that group. And when Kevin Garnett needed to get it done, he got it done. And that's Kevin Garnett's legacy. Now, the next guy on the list is Big Timmy Duncan. Big Tim, he started playing basketball when he was 14 years old. He was actually a swimmer. The guy loves his martial arts. And, in a league that is star-driven, he was the counterpart to that. He was very team-oriented. He was very friendly to the Spurs organization. He took one big contract in his career. Then he sort of did the Tom Brady where he gave the team what the team needed. And that is what Tim Duncan is going to be remembered for, being a team first player. And while being a team first player, Tim Duncan was able to accumulate 2 MVPs, 3 finals MVPs, 15 all NBA selections, 15 all defensive selections. He's 6th all time in rebound, 14th all time in points, and 5th in blocks. Tim Duncan is arguably the greatest power forward of all time, and he played 6 or 7 years of his career at center because he was not moving as well as he used to. Tim Duncan, I hated for just a short period of time in my life. Tim Duncan in the finals against the Cavs was my least favorite player in the world, but I grew to respect him. He was a guy who was unselfish. He was a guy who took what he needed to take, and he was a guy who gave more than he needed to give. And when you look at these San Antonio Spurs championships, it's just a long list of consistency for the years Tim Duncan was there. The Spurs won championships with Tim Duncan in 1999, 2003, 2005, 2007, and 2014. They ended the first Lakers dynasty. They ended in 2005 when they won that championship. They beat the Detroit Pistons, the new bad boy Pistons with Rasheed Wallace and co. And that they were the team that beat another one of my favorites in the Mark D'Antonio running gun Suns. That team, that was a really fun team as well. But really, when you think about it, Greg Popovich and Tim Duncan are the Tom Brady and the Bill Belichick of the sport. Greg Popovich was rough around the edges to protect his players, like Tony Parker, like Manu Ginobili, like Tim Duncan, and they did not really take well to the load management types. With Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili sneak dissing Kawhi Leonard, that's their lasting legacy. Tim Duncan's legacy is still growing because he's going to become an NBA coach. And to me, the weirdest thing about Tim Duncan is he's never felt like he's liked basketball. The dude was a swimmer. The dude owns an auto car garage. He owns a lot of small businesses. He's an investor. He's a smart guy. Like, obviously, he's put himself in great positions. In college, he was a really great player. So his legacy is not going to be that of a star. It's going to be that of a man who did what he had to do and did what the team needed to become the greatest basketball dynasty the sport's ever seen. And they came up just short of that. But that is what I think defines this class, is their pursuit of greatness. This is what these great players do, and they put the teams first. It's just the 3 players here defined the era of basketball that ushered me into the sport. The early 2000s with these guys and Shaq and Steve Nash, and the list continues to go on. They were the defining figures of that era. And obviously the era that ushered me in was the LeBron era when he was in Cleveland, becoming a LeBron fan. You had him taking on the league, and the big 3 happened, and it created this villain that everyone just hated. Kobe Bryant on the Lakers. I remember playing NBA 2K10 with Kobe on the cover after he won that title. It's just, it's been such a long run. And this class, this is the first NBA Hall of Fame class that has made me feel old. The rest of them were like, oh yeah, these old guys are getting in the Hall of Fame. And I'm like, wow, these guys were legitimate stars when I was like 10 or 11 years old. So what does that mean for me? These guys are getting into the Hall of Fame right now. And then it makes me think, it's like, man, I'm going to be 24 years old this year. What happened? That is this class. To me, this was the class in NBA Live in 2K when you first start playing at my age, that you're just like, let's find the team with Kevin Garnett. Let's find the team with Kobe Bryant. Let's find the team with Tim Duncan. And we'll see how this goes. I mean, all 3 of these guys left an impact on the sport, the lasting legacy. They definitely left their mark. And that is what's truly important. And this is what this class represents. Forward in this show. Congrats to all three of those men. Rest in peace to Kobe Bryant and the other victims of the helicopter crash. So the next thing in line is talking about the Big Don's big meeting. Trump's been calling a lot of meetings lately. I don't really talk politics on the show, but this is very sports related. This is actually all about sports and how the president sees the next couple months with sports taking place. I am interested to see if any of what he said is true, because if he promises sports by August and sports come back, I'm not gonna say it, but you guys know what I'm saying. If sports come back by August, and he said that sports are gonna come back by August, I'm not gonna say it, but you know what I'm saying. So in this meeting, Donald Trump really made himself seem like a man who understands American people. Yes, I know there's going to be a lot of Corona bros arguing about this. Why is he so concerned about sports? But most of America enjoys sitting down and watching a game to relieve their stresses. It gives them something to focus on, it gives them something to care about, and it gives them something to do, most importantly. It is entertainment, it is pastime. What are the pastimes right now? You got video games, you got TV, and it's not new TV, granted, it's not. It's rewatching all the shows you've already watched. That's the best part about sports, is sports are unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen when you turn them on. So it's different. You know, they're releasing movies to iTunes. I can't go to a movie theater right now, but I could watch a sport on my big screen TV. So now, he's not a doctor. We all know that. Donald Trump is far from a doctor. He has been incorrect quite a few times when it comes to this coronavirus. But he has taken enough action to sort of deter the virus a little bit. And we're talking now, there are still problems with it. The U.S. is still limited on the much needed supplies. But without the travel, you know, there is going to be a lot of infrastructural questions moving forward when it comes to sports. How many fans are going to be allowed? Are there going to be fans allowed? How much are players going to be allowed to travel? How are they going to manage traveling to avoid contracting the virus? How are they going to manage who the players come in contact with to not contract the virus? What are all of these little things they're going to do to prevent the NBA players from getting sick and or spreading the virus? And I'm not just talking NBA players, NFL players, college football players. You know, there's so many leagues. Interesting enough, I had some takeaways from this. So my first takeaway of this is not anything on what Donald Trump said. This is not anything on what was said during this meeting. This is this plain, I'm laying it out for you. Sports are important for the psyche of most American people. And without them, a lot of the world is lost and looking for stuff to do. Like 3 days into this pandemic, there was a dude betting on the weather. It was a fake video, it was terrible acting, but that's the joke. The issue of a pandemic is not going to be something we should force to get teams back. We should not be taking drastic measures just to put athletes in situations that are going to get them hurt or allow them to spread these diseases faster than they could. So the first takeaway from this, Adam Silver said on the call that sports leagues, including the NBA, would like to be part of a return to normalcy and help with the economy as long as health officials declare it safe to do so. A person familiar with the call told USA Today Sports on the condition of anonymity because the person was not authorized to speak publicly about the call. So no one is allowed to speak publicly about what was said exactly in the call. So it's a lot of what people are wanting you to hear from that call. So you got to remember, all fake news in America comes from the source. You can't blame the networks. You can't blame that. They have their sources. They run with what they want to run with. And the sources give the information they want to give. Now we take a look at this. What was said. The NBA would like to be a part of a return to normalcy and help with the economy. The NBA wants to be the first team back because they need to finish their season. And if they are the first team back, they're going to get absurd ratings because no one's absolutely seen the sports. And on the next topic, you're going to hear another big reason why the NBA wants to get back first. Adam Silver is not a dumb guy. Adam Silver doesn't know the fact. I mean, I think the NBA very much could. This is a lot easier. So the NBA could fly everybody into Vegas. All the hotels are vacant right now. You give each team their own hotel or their own floor in a hotel. Say it's the MGM Grand, all right? All the teams get designated practice times at the Thomas and Mack Center, the MGM Grand Arena, the T-Mobile Arena, all those arenas. And they get to practice in those facilities throughout the day. I think this is a lot more feasible than most of the other sports that are outdoors, most of the other sports that travel more. Yes, it's going to be a lot different playing on the same floor time and time again. You've got 3 arenas, the Thomas Mack Center, the T-Mobile Arena, and you've got another MGM Grand Arena. Caesars Palace, I'm pretty sure, has a basketball court. There are arenas and places where you can actually set this up everywhere throughout Vegas. That is real. That is the real deal. So now you start taking into consideration that the NBA could legitimately be the first person or first sport back. It's not that crazy. And you can see that the NBA is investing into health testing measures. And if those are successful, they're going to be investing and donating to the rest of the United States with those tests. And once testing gets done faster, recovery gets done faster, and then we're all subsiding this disease a lot faster. The other part about this is one of the things that was said was for this to all blow over, there will have to be a sudden change. A discovery of a vaccine, a legitimate piece of scientific data showing that this disease is not as bad as people are predicting or projecting. There were drastic measures taken. There are stay-at-home orders in almost every single state. You are recommended to wear a mask when you go out. Like, this is a serious conversation topic. So yes, there would absolutely need to be a sudden change. And if there is a working vaccine or multiple working vaccines that are going to be tested, they will expedite that process, which usually takes around 13 months. They could probably, if they can get through this with the help of the FDA, working very closely with the FDA. This is the CDC, the FDA, all those organizations working together to get this vaccine out to the people. I think reasonably, if they could project that vaccine coming in August, 5 months from now, that would make it something a sudden change. Probably not going to happen. We're probably not going to be able to get a vaccine for this sort of coronavirus until the next month. That is what makes this such an interesting piece of science, honestly. And there's no need to rush it back. I mean, when you look at this article, there wasn't much said outside of the main little things like Trump wants this back by August. So this is the other quote from it. This is from a pool report. The president recognized the good work being done by many teams and players to care for their communities, workforces, and fan bases across the nation. The commissioners thanked President Trump for national leadership and for his interest in the sports industry. President Trump encouraged them to continue their support of their fellow Americans during this challenging time. That's just a good presidential banter, good presidential talk. That's it. That's really all there was in that meeting. There's not really much you can do besides hope and pray that this thing subsides for everybody's sake, for all the health of it. For now, sports leagues are going to have to either take some drastic measures to make sure sports are still happening, or they are going to have to just wait it out and see. Now, this is an interesting takeaway from another part of this. And this is why travel bans are so important when it comes to the spread of disease. The travel in the UEFA Champions League is evidence on how fast sports can spread a pandemic. And when you look at some of the games that are played, some of the hotspots in Europe, whether they're England and Italy, whether they're Germany and Italy, whether they're England and Spain, so you see these European countries with the highest rates of coronavirus spreading. They all had soccer games in the Champions League against each other. And those stadiums fill up to 45 to 65,000. Usually, some of them are even bigger than that. So, what that means is the possibility of the disease spreading in those sporting events was so great and so possible that you really did need to cancel the travel ban and take the fans out of the arenas, because as science discovers, this disease is spreading a lot faster and a lot easier than people think. The silver lining to that is the disease has been far less deadly than a lot of people predicted, and thanks to the drastic measures Dr. Fauci and other state health representatives took in their respective states, there has been quite a hit on the exponential growth of this disease. So now, the last takeaway of this is the numbers around the world are steadying and even decreasing, especially in people catching it every day, and the fatality rate, which means doctors are better prepared for it, better prepared for taking care of these patients, and most importantly, now the health system is more prepared to take on greater risk and greater numbers. And that is the case around the world, and that is what is up with the Big Don's meeting. So now, there's two sports. I'm going to talk about them separately because one's a great idea, and one, to me, is just kind of inhumane in a lot of ways. So, when you look, Jeff Passan of ESPN reported that the MLB union focused on a plan that could allow seasons to start as early as May in Arizona. So Major League Baseball and its players are increasingly focused on a plan that could allow them to start the season as early as May, and has the support of high-ranking federal public health officials who believe the league can safely operate amid the coronavirus pandemic. So the source says all 30 teams will play games at stadiums with no fans in the Phoenix area, so a lot of the places like Goodyear Ballpark and all the spring training facilities, and including Arizona Diamondbacks Chase Field. So 10 spring training facilities are there. Players, coaching staffs, and other essential personnel would be sequestered at local hotels, where they would live in relative isolation and travel only to and from the stadium, sources said. Federal officials at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as well as the National Institutes of Health, have been supportive of a plan that would adhere to strict isolation, promote social distancing, and allow the MLB to be the first league back. So the MLB then goes on to issue a statement. The MLB has actively been trying to consider numerous contingency plans that would allow play to commence once the public health situation has improved to the point that it's safe to do so. The MLB statement said, while we have discussed the idea of staging games at one location and one potential option, we have not settled on that option or developed a detailed plan. While we continue to interact regularly with governmental and public health officials, we have not sought or received approval of any plan from federal, state, and local officials. So the way to do this is not this way, honestly. You wait a little bit. So when you take away April and May, you're going to take around 40 to 45 games out of the picture. That's fine. The Major League Baseball season has always been too long anyways. If you realistically were going to wait this out and do this, you'd have to wait until June. And that is my opinion on it. If you want to get this started, which would lead the season to starting in July, which would lead the season ending at the same time. You just cut games, period. You're going to lose money this year. Every single sports league is going to lose money this year. The MLB is one of the leagues that still totally relies on fans spending money at the door. They also rely heavily on local media markets, which would like an example, because I always watch the Indians, would Matt Underwood, the commentator for the Indians, be considered essential? Would we just use one of those guys to tell the game? Would we try to limit the total amount of people? And how many people would be okay with separating from their family for the entire baseball season? I know in a lot of ways the baseball season's kind of already like that, but half the time you're home, half the time you're not there. You're just gone for months on end. And that's not right. And I don't think a lot of the older baseball players are going to be willing to do that. I think, like I said, this idea could work with basketball. This idea could not work with the Major League Baseball. I don't think it is feasible. I don't think without a spring training type period it's possible, which they said would start in May. I think locking the players in their rooms poor, and I think as long as the players are limited from contact with the outside world, that they should be allowed to have a certain amount of people, families, children per team that could come and stay with them if they're going to make this work. Absolutely. And that is why I think the MLB's newest plan is garbage. It really takes the humane aspect out of players, which is a problem that's all too common in sports. And you need to remember these guys are people with family, with children, with wives, who do not want to be away from their family during a pandemic, number one, because they want to make sure and ensure their safety. And number two, it's just not fair to keep them away from their homes that long just for baseball to be played. It's not good. So now, that is why the MLB plan's a failure. But this plan is freaking dope. All right. This plan could work. The UFC has had some serious trouble recently. All right. So they were having trouble getting Khabib out of Russia. Then there was a fake report from a fake Ariel Helwani page that tweeted that Dana White has talked to Vladimir Putin and they are allowing him to leave the country to fight in UFC 249. Now, that did not end up happening, but Dana White is a boss man and he is a boss mover. So to host fights, this is how he's planning on doing it. He has secured a private island. This is to host fights every week and extravagant plans to be the only sport still going during the coronavirus pandemic. Dana White is close to... so what did White say on this? You're asking, why is he planning on doing this? Because it's cool. Who doesn't want to see two fighters enter, one fighter leave? Like, that is what this is all about. UFC 249 is going to take place at a secret location, a secure private island. That is like a James Bond movie in sports, right? Like, this is a rumble in the jungle. This is a rumble in the Caribbean. This is that doesn't flow the same, but you get what I'm saying. This is not coming up with a joke there. That's not happening. Nothing rhymes with Caribbean. So White also said, so this place where this fight is going to be on April 18th, I have locked up for 2 months, so I'm going to continue to pump fights out. I also secured an island. I've got an island. The infrastructure is being built right now. We're going to do all of our international fights on this island. So this is going to be insane. So when we do this fight April 18th, international in the United States, we're going to start cranking. The OC will be back up and running internationally and here in the States. White said he wasn't going to reveal the location of UFC 249. There's a lot of creepy people out there, and when they find out the location, they will start attacking the location and making phone calls, he said. So this keeps the creeps at bay. So secret fight locations, a private island, and consultation with the doctor to make sure it's safe. So White's last closing comments on this, we consulted with our doctor, Dr. Davidson, who has consulted with many doctors to see if this plan would actually be feasible. Like I said, the health and safety of not just the athletes, but the athletic commission that will be there. The referees, judges will be there. My production staff all be there. We're making sure that everybody is taken care of. We're going above and beyond, making sure that everyone is safe. That is what's important, and that's what the MLB is missing. I didn't think it was going to be the UFC saving the sports world, but I'm excited. I think it's a great sport with a lot of great opportunity to grow here if it's the first sport back. And yes, that is a legitimate race, and this one's very possible because you look at this fight card, UFC 249 is I want to say it's a 10-fight card with five prelims, and then, so it's 11, 12, all right, 12. 12 is what we're going to decide on as the final number. So there's 12 fighters, 6 on the prelim, 6 on the card, and that is... So yeah, absolutely. I think the UFC is the sport that has the best idea. I think my idea for the NBA is second. And really, at the end of the day, I think Sports, take your time. I miss you. But once you're back, we're all going to enjoy you even more than we did before. So yeah, there is some news I'm going to talk about before I get into the final segment of the show. The first is NBA 2K. ESPN is now showing NBA players playing 2K, and I think this pandemic's gone too far. Most of the players are actually terrible at the game, and that is why it's no fun to watch. If you're going to play a video game tournament on TV, make sure it's the best players in the world. Their fans will flock. You'll still get ratings. It's all good. That's cool. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers released their new uniforms by going back to their old uniforms, and it was a look that needed to come back. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers went back to their nice classic pewter and maroon look. It was the reveal of the century. They went back to the look that they won the Super Bowl in, and that was great. They went back to the big Tampa Bay Buccaneer flag on the helmet as well, and they went back to the pewter helmets altogether with an all pewter color rush. So I think going back to it was the smartest move they could have done. I think that's going to be the move the Browns make as well, with a sort of slight modern take on an older jersey. With new jerseys, it's all about striping, and it's all about looking clean when it comes to digital media engagement. And the Buccaneers jerseys and that added orange to it was a little bit troublesome when it came to that. This goes back to what works, and I think you're going to have an opportunity once you bring the throwbacks back to use the creamsicle throwback again as well. So that is the news. So last week I finally got around to it. I finally watched the first spin-off movie of the Fast and the Furious series, Hobbs and Shaw, and I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was a particularly strong film, especially in regards to the conversation topics like friendship and overcoming your differences to take on a greater foe. It was like Remember the Titans in those ways, and, Jason Statham got help from his family. Dwayne Johnson got help from his family in it. And, they went back to their roots. They went back to Dwayne Johnson's roots and took on an even greater foe. And that was beautiful to watch. All right. So the Fast and the Furious series has taken the world by storm and has been one of the longest lasting movie series in the world. And they're going on Fast and the Furious 9 now, so they've made 8 movies and a spin-off film. When you look at the total runtime, it is hours of badass films. So it's been crazy, and that's what you like to see. And you look at the box office performance in all these movies. Fast and the Furious did $200 million worldwide. Too Fast, Too Furious did $200 million worldwide. The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift did $150 million worldwide. And then ever since then, it has continued to grow all the way up until The Fate of the Furious did $1 billion. Furious 7 did $1.5 billion. The Fate of the Furious did $1.2 billion. So this movie has just, it's just great. It's a great film, and when you watch Fast and the Furious, people make fun of it because it's easy to make fun of. It's easy to poke fun at the Fast and the Furious series, isn't it? It's like, it's a movie where the alpha male personas take charge, and it's about cars, and then there's scantily dressed women, and there's drug dealers, and there's undercover cops, and there's a bigger story going on in the underground. And that is why, the movies talk about themes like family, and is our family our blood, or is our family who we choose? Can you completely fail a person and come back to them? And that is what the movies have been around. So the first installment of this series is The Fast and the Furious. Too Fast, Too Furious is the second. Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift is the third one that came out. Fast and Furious is 4, Fast 5, obviously 5, Fast and Furious 6, the 6th movie, Furious 7, the 7th movie, and The Fate of the Furious is the 8th movie with Fast 9 in production. So, when you take a look at these movies, I've got them listed out, and I'm going to go from worst to best to me. All right, so the worst movie to me is Fast and Furious. To me, that movie was all right at best. I think it was a continuation of the franchise, and it got us back to it. But it wasn't until Fast 5 that the movie franchise finally truly got its footing and became the worldwide phenomenon that we all know and love today. So in this film, it follows FBI agent Brian O'Connor, who's back working on the right side of the law and continues to work there. And he is forced to work with Dominic Toretto to take down a drug dealer, Arturo Braga. I think he's one of the more forgettable villains in the movie, and that is why it is ranked last. Although the series was very important for driving the future story forward and taking the movie from being a typical cop buddy film and making it into an extravagant action adventure. This film did all that. And in this film, they had found out that, who was it? Letty. So Dominic Toretto and his new crew, consisting of his girlfriend Letty, Tego, Leo, Enrico Santos, Cara, and Han Lu, are hijacking fuel tankers in the Dominican Republic. Dominic's successful police are on their trail, forcing the crew to disband and go their separate ways, with Han deciding to go to Tokyo. That's how it all connects back. So that is sort of how it ends. And then realizing that he must leave, Dominic runs, leaving Letty behind to protect her from harm. So now Dom is working in Panama City. Brian O'Connor is trying to track down a Mexican drug lord. So what ends up happening? They find out they have to work together because that drug lord took Letty. So in that movie, when they are trying to apprehend this drug lord, Letty is a drug runner for the drug lord, making money, and she dies. And the whole film revolves around them coming to get Braga, and it is one of those aspects that is complicated. And in this film, it's a film where Dominic feels like Brian is lying to him again. Brian was the last person to talk to Letty. So the story itself, very good, very in-depth, but it does not make the top end of this list because all the films are good. So the next one on the list to me is Furious 7. Furious 7 was the 7th iteration, obviously directed by James Wan, and it was an extremely exciting movie. This was the one where Dwayne Johnson teamed up with the crew. This one was the one where Paul Walker passed away. So after defeating Owen Shaw, Dominic Toretto and Brian O'Connor and the rest of their team have returned to the United States to live their normal lives again. Brian begins to accustom himself to life as a father, while Dom tries to help Letty Ortiz regain her memory. Meanwhile, Owen's older brother, Deckard Shaw, that is Jason Statham, his character, breaks into a secure hospital that the comatose Owen is being held in and swears vengeance against Dom and his team. So before breaking into Luke Hobbs' diplomatic security service office to extract profiles on Dom's crew, after revealing his identity, Shaw engages Hobbs in a fight and escapes when he detonates a bomb that severely injures Hobbs. Dom later learns from his sister Mia that she is pregnant again and convinces her to tell Brian. However, a letter bomb sent from Tokyo explodes and destroys the Toretto house just seconds after Han, a member of Dom's team, is apparently killed by Shaw in Tokyo. So now Dom and Hobbs start working together, and this is what makes the movie so awesome. They start working together to do this, and in a awesome turn of events, they actually make a pretty good team, right? So now this is the one, and then he's taken into custody by Hobbs, and at the end, at a beach, Brian and Mia play with their son, while Dom, Letty, Roman, Tej, and Ramsey observe, acknowledging that Brian is better off retired with his family. They drive off And Dom says it's never goodbye. He drives away, but Brian catches up with him at a crossroad, and they look at each other, and then Brian head nods him. Dom head nods him back, and that song by Wiz Khalifa and Charlie Puth plays. Hey, I'll see you again. And it's honestly one of the most emotionally... Oh, man, that was just so hard to watch, especially just knowing the circumstances. One of the few times I've truly teared up and cried in a movie, and that was Furious 7, and that is 7th on the list. I think it's pretty close to tied with Fast and the Furious 6, but I like Fast and the Furious 6 more than Fast and the Furious 7 because it is the last movie where Brian O'Connor truly takes on the same role, and they are running, and this is the one where you know what? Scratch that. Fast 6 is 7th place. Fast 7 is 6th place. I wrote that down wrong. So yeah, Fast 7 is the 6th best movie. So Fast and the Furious 6 is 7th. I'm not restarting the segment, but yes, Fast and the Furious 6 might be the worst one. I don't think Owen Shaw's very memorable. When you look at the team in it, they work together in it again, and I mean, Letty's back. This is the one where Han's girlfriend, I can never remember her name, dies, falling out of the plane. In this movie, the action sequences are awesome. I really do enjoy it. This was one of the largest grossing films of the year, and this is following their awesome heist in Brazil. So honestly, almost any sequel to that major heist movie was going to not live up to the hype, all right? So now there's a disgraced MI6 agent, Owen Shaw, who is a British SAS major and special ops soldier. Hobbs persuades Dom to help capture Shaw by showing him a photo of his supposedly murdered girlfriend, Letty Ortiz. Dom and his crew accept the mission in exchange for their amnesty and allowing them to return to the United States. Genius. So now they're working together, but not really working together. In this one, the crew is more working for Hobbs, and that is the difference here. So Dom challenges Letty in a street racing competition in this one. He returns her cross necklace he had kept. After Letty leaves, Shaw offers Dom a chance to walk away, threatening to otherwise hurt his family. Dom refuses. Tez tracks Shaw's next attack to Spanish NATO base. This is where the awesome plane scene happens. Unfortunately, Gal Gadot's character passes away in it, Giselle Yashar, and that's the worst part. This is where Han makes the decision to leave and go to Tokyo, and that leads to Deckard Shaw killing him. And this is the most important part of this film and why it is not the worst movie. But it connects everything together, the future and the past. It makes Tokyo Drift a vital point of the movie. And yes, Tokyo Drift saved it, because before Tokyo Drift, Vin Diesel didn't want to do anymore. After the success of Too Fast, Too Furious, Paul Walker was kind of, in and out on doing another one, and then they finally did it, and that is what was so great. And now the 5th best movie is Fate of the Furious. Fate of the Furious was an action-packed bonanza, and I think the reason I like Fate of the Furious the most isn't because it's the best movie. It doesn't have the best story. This is where the far-fetchedness of Fast and the Furious has taken it to another level, but this movie had the best action sequences of all of them combined. When you go into this movie, and this is the first installment not to feature Paul Walker, you don't know how it's going to go. Fast 7, it was good, but it wasn't like the best movie. It was more of a sentimental piece. And then you get Fate of the Furious, and it took the story to the next level. So Dominic Toretto and Letty are on their honeymoon in Havana, and they do the race because Fernando gets in trouble, and he does the car, and it takes it back to the classic. He uses the Coke can lid on it, and now it's a supercharged Chevrolet Impala, and then he works, and then narrowly winning the race, Dom allows Raldo to keep his car, earning his respect, and instead leaves his cousin with his car, which is a nice car as well, obviously. So now Dom is approached by the elusive cyber terrorist Cypher, who coerces him into working for her. So Dom becomes the villain in this movie, and that is why it's so cool. So this means afterwards, Dom and his team, comprising of Letty, Robin Pierce, Tej Parker, and Ramsey, are recruited by the DSS. That's where Hobbs works to help him retrieve an EMP advice. So this is where it takes off. And then you've got all these ones, and then it takes them to a nuclear football held by Russian Minister of Defense, all this stuff. And this is where they become super spies. So now Dom infiltrates a base in Russia. And this isn't in like Russia. This is in like the Siberia part. So they're on ice. And Ludacris chooses this awesome tank car. Dom obviously has like a souped up Dodge Challenger and he has it made so it could run in the snow. And then this is what happens. So Cypher reveals her motives. She is holding Dom's ex-lover, DSS agent Elena Neves, the Brazilian girl, and Dom's son. So Dom does have a son. That's the biggest twist of this film. And then they go. And now it's insane. Kurt Russell's in it. He's not really anybody. And they drive on the ice. There's a tank and then the submarine. And then it's just the best when it comes to the action sequences, I think, of all the films. When you look at that ice scene, when you look at the race at the beginning, it's the coolest for sure. And then I'm an old generation head when it comes to these movies. 4 on this list is Tokyo Drift. Tokyo Drift is the most pure of the films. Unfortunately, the only main cast member of the films is Han's character, and he is a rich magnate in Tokyo, Japan, obviously. That's how he owns all the stuff he does. He's also a rival to notorious gang leader's son, DK, who is the Drift King. But we all know what does DK stand for? Donkey Kong. It's Lucas Black plays the protagonist in the film. He is funny. He's a funny, interesting change. The film starts with this troubled kid at a high school who just can't stop racing his car. He races the popular rich kid in his old beat-up muscle car, was going to win, takes a turn too sharp, rolls his car, is bloody, gets the date, honestly. He wins the race, in my opinion. Takes down this dude's Viper. Who gives their high school kid a $100,000 Dodge Viper? I don't know. But that car got what it deserved. And then, so Sean decided to cut through the structures, catches up to Clay. Clay hits Sean's car repeatedly until they reach a high-speed turn, which causes both cars to crash. Sean's car is totaled. Clay and Cindy's wealthy families help them escape punishment, but because Sean is a repetitive offender for street racing, he is sent to live in Tokyo, Japan with his father, and that is to avoid juvenile detention or jail. So in Tokyo, Sean befriends Twinkie, who is played by, I want to say it's Lil Bow Wow, or I guess just Bow Wow at this point, and he owns a car and is a very popular guy in the street racing scene. Sean has his first confrontation with DK because he likes his girlfriend Neela, and he's not allowed to drive. But Sean decides to race against Takashi with Han's car, and his first race is pretty much embarrassing. He does not know what drifting is, and that is where the movie really gets started. He repays his debt to Han, and they become really good friends, and Han teaches him how to drift, and then Han also loans him a Mitsubishi Lancer for future races, and then he starts beating all of these people and stuff, and he's racing awesome, and then and there's this awesome scene where he drifts through that major square in Tokyo, and then he's gunning the gas, and then Han's like, whoa, those cops. He's like, ooh, a cop. And Han's like, hey, they won't take you if you're going anything greater than 85 kilometers an hour. All cool like Han does. And then as all the confidence is happening, Takashi's uncle Kamada, the head of the accuser, reprimands Takashi for allowing Han to steal from him. Takashi and Morimoto confront Han, Sean, and Neela about thefts. This is where the worst sidekick of all time, besides the Asian guy in the first one, they start fighting and stuff, and then they flee, and then they're pursued by Takashi and Morimoto, and then a car hits Han's car, and Han saves Sean, and then the car crashed, and then Sean and Neela crashed. Meanwhile, moments after escaping from Takashi, Han's car is T-boned, and he apparently dies when the car explodes before Sean has a chance to save him, which became the most pivotal part in the movie series and how they built upon this movie. And that's where this movie is. So when you think of Fast and the Furious, you think of racing cars. And when you think of car culture, the drift culture is one of the true underground racing cultures that was not seen in the first two movies. You had demolition derbies, you had drag races, you had street races, traditional ones in Too Fast, Too Furious and Fast and the Furious. And that is sort of what you got to see. You didn't get to see any of the drift cars, though. And that is what made this one fun. Drift racing is very common around the world, and it's very dangerous. But this movie opened up that. So now you've got this awesome final scene on the mountain, the drift mountain, that the Neela used to go and drift all the time, but no one had ever raced from the top to the bottom of it until today. So now they need a car, and with all of Han's cars impounded, Sean and Han's friends need to rebuild the 1967 Ford Mustang that Sean's father was working on. Never going to finish that. Sean's father kind of sucked. And then a Nissan Skyline engine salvage from Han's Sylvia that was totaled by Sean in his first place. So he was racing with Han as part of that car. So he had a guardian angel. And then on the mountain, crowds gathered to see it. Takashi takes the lead initially, but Sean's training allows him to catch up. Determined to win, Takashi resorts to ramming Sean's car. And then Sean does what every great person would do when a person whips their car at you and punches the brake. Takashi flies off the edge. Oh, we don't know if he dies. And then he wins. And then at the end, how are they going to continue this movie series? And no one thinks Vin Diesel is ever going to make another one. Sean pulls up in his Nissan Silvia Spec R next to a silver Plymouth Roadrunner, driven by the Challenger, a guy who was old friends with Han. Who could it be? It's freaking Dominic Toretto. That's why it's fourth. It's the movie that connects the old with the new. Third on my list, the original The Fast and the Furious. This is where the debate really takes place. Do you like Too Fast, Too Furious more? Do you like The Fast and the Furious more? And this can all sort of hinder on, do you like Paul Walker's character more or Vin Diesel's character more? When I was younger, it was always Paul Walker's character. Now I like Dom more. But all time, I just love Tyrese, and I love that. So The Fast and the Furious, we're going to go, that is my number one film in this list. It is by far just a movie that needed to be made in 2001. So this idea came from the director, Rob Cohen, read a Vibe magazine article in 1998 called Racer X, which detailed the illegal street racing circuit. And you know, the craziest thing is race wars in the desert is real, and people train for that. How are you going to train for that if you can't drive? You got to do some illegal stuff. And now, so this starts with a heist, and then Brian O'Connor is assigned to the task force. He's investigating Toretto's market. He's investigating the Asian street gang, and all of it ends up revolving around paying for the expensive hobby of street racing. So now, Brian brings a modified 1995 Mitsubishi Eclipse. That's the orange one, and he's undercover at this point in time, and he's trying to find the lead on a heist crew because they're expert level drivers. So where are you going to go? It's going to be the street racing scene. So Dom arrives in a Mazda and initiates a drag race between himself, Brian, and two others. Lacking funds, Brian is forced to wager his car. Dominic wins the race after Brian's car malfunctions. But this is where the greatest scene happens. This is where you sort of understand the whole movie series. Brian O'Connor says, "I almost got you." And Dom looks at him. He's like, "You almost had me with your bunny shifting, your double shifting, your double clutching. No, you didn't almost have me." As any great racer knows, it's not if you win by an inch or by a mile. Winning is winning. That's what it's all about. So how is Brian also going to pay off his debt? He starts working for Dom, and then he falls in love with his sister. Then he becomes a part of this misfit family, but he's still a cop, and he's still investigating it. And then he doesn't want to believe that it's the Torettos, and it's his gang. And then as it goes, he starts blaming these people, and then they're not guilty of it. So at the end, Brian witnesses Dominic and his crew leaving and realizes that they're the hijackers. He reveals his true identity to Mia and convinces her to help him find the crew. Dominic, Letty, Vince, and Leon attack a semi-truck trailer, intending it to be their final heist. The armed driver shoots Vince and runs Letty off the road. Brian arrives with Mia, rescues Vince. He is forced to reveal his identity, call in an emergency medical care to save him. Dominic, Mia, and the rest of the crew leave before the authorities can arrive. Sometime later, Brian arrives at Dominic's house to apprehend him as he is reversing his father's 1970 Dodge Charger out of the garage. Jesse arrives pleading for protection. Tran and Lance ride by on motorcycles, shoot Jesse, and then Brian and Dominic give chase, finding and killing Tran and injuring Lance. Lance is the worst sidekick in the movie, and then they race. And they talk, and Dom looks at Brian, and he's thankful that he saved Vince, you could tell. And then, all of a sudden, Dominic Toretto looks at Brian across the way, and he said, "We used to race this all the time. From this light to those railroad tracks, it's a quarter mile exactly." Revs his engine. Brian revs his engine back. Light changes, they shoot out. And then, to pay his debts back, to pay his betrayal, he throws his keys to a Toyota Supra that he fixed up to win at Race Wars, and gives Dom the keys after Dom's dream car, the 1970 Chevelle that he said was too dangerous to ride, or the 1970 Charger, excuse me. And that is when Dominic escapes, Brian walks away, and they go their separate ways. And the final scene is Dominic driving through Baja, California in a Chevrolet Chevelle SS. That is my third favorite movie of the series. The second is Too Fast, Too Furious. And honestly, I don't even need to pull it up. I've seen Too Fast, Too Furious more than I've seen any of the other ones because it is the best of the original three movies. Too Fast, Too Furious follows Ryan O'Connor, a federal agent working for the FBI, to take down, once again, a notorious drug dealer. He is tasked with taking down, I can never remember his name because to me he's a very unimportant character, but the one guy who's in other movies too, when you look at Too Fast, Too Furious, O'Connor flees from Los Angeles to escape prosecution. He subsequently relocates to Miami, making a living by participating in illegal street races. We all know how it starts. He has that cool-ass blue and gray Nissan Skyline, aided by his friend and local mechanic, Tej Parker. Ludicrous. Getting into acting, yes. Following one race against driver Suki, Slapjack, and Orange Julius, the police show up and Brian is arrested. He is taken into custody, but he's given a deal by Bilkins, his former boss, a U.S. Customs agent, Markham, to go undercover and bring down Argentinian drug lord Carter Verone in exchange for the erasure of his criminal record. This is his chance to make right and his chance to get away from and evade the law for good and be on the good side of the law. So this prompts Brian to travel back to Barstow, where he enlists the help of his childhood friend who served jail time for housing stolen cars in a garage, Roman, who's currently on parole and blames Brian for his arrest, but reluctantly agrees in exchange for the same deal Brian was offered. For their mission, they are issued two awesome cars, a Mitsubishi Evolution and a Mitsubishi Spider. Roman and Brian are later hired by Verone, which is part of the mission as undercover agents. They get a package from his confiscated Ferrari. This is awesome because Tyrese Gibson takes off his shirt, punches the window, and then Brian just opens the door, and it's like, and then there's all these competitions. Ava Mendes is in it. It gets really intense because then they start suspecting that Ava Mendes' character is working for the feds, and she's been in too long, so now the feds are thinking that she's just in the game. She's in the drug game. And then they torture that detective with the rat. I still have nightmares about it. And then on the day of the mission, they organize all these different things, and they take him to the warehouse, and then the scramble happens, and then Brian and Tyrese are approaching the Camaro point, and this is where ejectocito cuz happens, and then Brian's doesn't work, so the guy keeps going. And then he has to fight him out, and then they get in the same car, and then Tyrese is like, "You're not going to do what I think you're doing, are you?" And then he goes and he launches in the car, and then they land on a freaking yacht. And you're telling me there's 6 better movies in this series than that one? There's not. There's only one better. This was my favorite. I think this was just the movie. You know, it's Miami, it's racing, it's drug dealers, it's Fast and the Furious. It's too fast, and it's too furious of a film, honestly. And then the final one, Fast 5. This is the best Fast and the Furious. This movie is what elevated Fast and the Furious to one of the all-time greatest movie series of all time. In 2011, the American heist action film directed by Justin Lin and written by Chris Morgan is a sequel to the 2009's Fast and Furious. Fifth installment stars Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, Jordana Brewster, Tyrese Gibson, Chris Ludacris Bridges, Matt Scholes, Sung Kang, Dwayne Johnson, and Joaquin de Almeida. So yes, they are on the run from the law. Dominic Toretto, Brian O'Connor, Mia, and they plan to heist $100 million from a corrupt businessman in Hernan Reyes. So they are attacking the bad. While being pursued for arrest by U.S. Diplomatic Security Service and Agent Luke Hobbs. This is Dwayne Johnson's first appearance. And honestly, this gave a lot of street cred to Dwayne Johnson as an action star. So Universal Studios said, we can't keep doing the street racing theme. It's prevalent in previous films. But we got to transform this series to make it even bigger than it was. So this wasn't where you say Justin Lin would want to go. This was about street racing. This was always about the racing. That is what people complain about. And that's why I think the other four movies aren't as good as the first three. But this one sort of stands alone. So this was unbelievable. And Fast 5 made $626 million, and obviously it just keeps getting bigger, but that's because movies just make more. And when you look at this plot, so Dom is being transported to a prison. His sister Mia and Brian, so this is how the last movie ends. Fast and Furious ends with Brian, Mia, in similar cars to the way the first movie ended. The black, I think they're Toyotas. The black Toyotas, they're flying around and they're like, all right, it's time. And they go and they save Dom from it. That's how the first movie started. So now Dom arrives at the train with his accomplishments. He realizes that one of them, ZZ, is only interested in stealing one car, a Ford GT40. Dom has Mia steal the car herself before he and Brian fight ZZ and his henchmen. During ZZ kills the DEA agents assigned to the vehicles, Dom and Brian are captured and brought to crime. Lord Hernan Reyes, the owner of the cars and ZZ's boss. Reyes orders the pair to be interrogated to discover the location of the car, and they manage to escape and retreat their state house. So obviously, they're good. So now, what's going on? What do? They want to get out of the game for good, and they're never going to get out of the game. Once you're in the game, you're always in the game. And they discover that he has $100 million. So now you've got the DS agent Luke Hobbs on them, trying to catch him. And then he's got help from a local officer, Elena Neves, who then gets promoted to work in the DSS. But they find it under assault by Reyes' men. Brian, Dom, and Mia escape. Dom suggests they split up and leave Rio. But Mia announces she is pregnant with Brian's child. Dom agrees to stick together and suggests they steal the money from Reyes to start a new life. They organize a team to perform the heist: Han, Roman, Tej, Giselle, Leo, and Santos. Vince later joins the team after saving Mia from being captured by Reyes' men. The crew infiltrate one of Reyes' facilities and set fire to the money there, baiting him into consolidating his money at one single location. So this was all part of the crime. And then the best scene happened is when they go and they win and they get the big safe and they're driving through and they've got it attached and they're taking on the rock, and it's just awesome. That's the best Fast and the Furious movie. Fast 5 is the best. So if you like my list, subscribe and rate to the podcast. That's going to be it for the day. This is your host, Christopher Rennie, signing out.